Anna Karenina, a novel by Leo Tolstoy. Confusion reigns in the Oblonsky household in Moscow. Steva Oblonsky has been unfaithful to his wife, Dolly, with her children's foreigner governess. Steva is distraught but not overly remorseful. Dolly, meanwhile, is devastated and refuses to leave her rooms. The servants advise Steva to apologize repeatedly, predicting that Dolly will calm down. Steva finally visits Dolly, begging her to remember their 9 years of marriage. Dolly is inconsolable, telling her husband he is disgusting and a total stranger to her. Steva goes to his office. His job is respectable and comfortable, thanks to his charm and good connections. He receives a surprise visit from an old friend, Konstantin Levin, who lives in the country. Steva introduces Levin to his business partners, saying that Levin is active in the Simstovo, his village administrative board. Levin reveals that he has quit his post on the board and tells Steva that he has an important matter to discuss. They arrange to meet for dinner. Steva guesses the matter has something to do with his sister-in-law, Kitty Serbatskaya, with whom he knows Levin is in love. While in Moscow, Levin stays with his half-brother Kosnishev, whose philosophical mindset sometimes perplexes Levin. The brothers discuss Levin's plan to visit their estranged and sickly third brother, Nikolai, who is back in Moscow with a girlfriend. Kosnishev advises Levin not to go, saying Levin cannot help Nikolai, who wishes to be left alone. Levin goes to the skating rink at the zoological gardens where he is sure he'll find the charming Kitty. She is at the rink as expected. Levin and Kitty enjoy one another's company together on the ice until Levin confesses that he feels more confident whenever Kitty, a less accomplished skater, leans on him for support. Kitty's mood suddenly darkens and she sends Levin away. Levin grows upset and goes off glumly to his dinner with Steva. Over the luxurious meal, Levin confesses to Steva his passionate love for Kitty. Steva encourages Levin to be hopeful but warns him of a rival for her affections, an officer named Alexei Vronsky. Steva then discusses his own problematic infatuation with his children's governess. Levin gently chastises Steva for his behavior, but Steva laughingly calls Levin a moralist. Kitty's mother, Princess Sherbatskaya, weighs the relative merits of Vronsky and Levin as suitors. She is disconcerted by Levin's awkwardness and generally favors Vronsky. But the princess is also aware that young Russian noblewomen of the new generation prefer to choose their husbands for themselves rather than submit to their parents' arrangements. That evening, Levin calls at Kitty's home and finds her alone. Kitty is aware that she feels affection for him, but she loves Vronsky. She considers avoiding Levin entirely, but then bravely meets him and declines his marriage proposal. Princess Sherbatskaya is relieved to see that no engagement has been declared. Vronsky arrives and a devastated Levin is impressed with his rival suitor. That night, Kitty cannot sleep, haunted by Levin's face. Kitty's father has learned about the rebuffed proposal and is upset as he prefers Levin to Vronsky. The next morning, Vronsky goes to the train station to meet his mother arriving from St. Petersburg. There he meets Steva, who has come to meet his sister Anna Karenina. Vronsky tells Steva he has met Levin, whom he finds nice but somewhat awkward. Steva defends Levin, hinting that Levin might have proposed to Kitty. Vronsky states that Kitty can find a better match. Meanwhile, the train arrives and Vronsky awaits his mother. While at the train station, Vronsky waits for his mother. Before she appears, Vronsky sees a woman with gentle, shining gray eyes whose face becomes animated at the sight of him. This is Anna Karenina, whom Steva has come to the train station to meet. Anna and Vronsky briefly exchange glances. Vronsky's mother appears and introduces Vronsky to Anna. As they are leaving the station, a worker is run over by a train and killed. Whether it is suicide or an accident is unclear. Anna gloomily views the death as a bad omen. Steve takes Anna to his home, where Dolly, devastated by grief over her husband's adultery, wishes to see no one. But Anna, having heard about the betrayal, insists on seeing Dolly and meets her warmly and compassionately. She does not attempt to console Dolly but is deeply sympathetic. She tells Dolly that Steve is suffering and that he is capable of total repentance. Dolly feels much better. Later that day, Kitty arrives at the Oblonsky residence, and Anna receives her warmly. Anna hears about Kitty's interest in Vronsky and says she met Vronsky at the station and liked him. At tea time, Dolly emerges from her room, and Kitty and Anna understand that Dolly and Stiva have been reconciled. They discuss the upcoming ball, and Kitty urges Anna to wear a lilac-colored dress. Later, Vronsky stops by the Oblonsky household and seems ashamed when he sees Anna. At the ball held not long afterward, Vronsky dances the first dance with Kitty, who looks radiant. Anna appears, dressed not in lilac but in black, which Kitty immediately realizes is Anna's best color. Kitty is puzzled by Anna's refusal to respond when Vronsky bows to her. Kitty dances many waltzes with Vronsky, but later finds Anna and Vronsky dancing together. Anna looks elated and triumphant. For the final morazka, Kitty turns away her suitors, expecting Vronsky to ask her to dance. She is stunned to see that Vronsky has pawned her to dance the last dance with Anna. Meanwhile, Levin gloomily reflects on his life after Kitty's rejection. He decides to pay a visit to his brother Nikolai. Upon arriving, Levin finds his sickly brother much thinner than he remembered. Nikolai introduces Levin to his companion Maria Nikolaevna, whom he saved from a whorehouse. Over dinner, Nikolai speaks at length about his socialist views. Maria privately tells Levin that Nikolai drinks too much. Levin leaves, having made Maria promise to write to him in case of need. Levin returns to his country estate, grateful for the blessings of his peaceful existence. At the Oblonskys, Anna and Dolly dine together by themselves. Anna is unwell and Kitty sends word that she has a headache. Anna expresses her amazement at having danced with Vronsky. She is confident that Vronsky will still pursue Kitty, but Dolly is not so sure. Anna leaves for St. Petersburg, relieved to escape Vronsky. On the train, she is tormented by self-doubt, unsure of who she is. As the train pauses at the station, Anna glimpses Vronsky on the platform and feels a joyful pride. He has followed her from Moscow. Arriving in St. Petersburg, Anna meets her husband Karenin at the station. Vronsky watches them together and can see that Anna does not love Karenin. Anna introduces the two men, and Vronsky asks if he may call at the Karenin home. At home, Anna's son, Seryosha, runs up to greet her, and Anna feels a sudden pang of disappointment in her son. She speaks to her morally upright friend Lydia Ivanovna and feels secure that nothing scandalous has happened in her relations with Vronsky. Anna dismisses her anxieties. While in St. Petersburg, Vronsky socializes with his colleague Petritsky, to whom he has lent his apartment, and Petritsky's lady friend Baroness Shilton. They light-heartedly chat before Vronsky leaves to make appearances at various places where he hopes to encounter Anna. The Sherbatskys are concerned about Kitty's health, which has been failing ever since the ball at which Vronsky slighted her. Though secretly convinced that love is the cause of Kitty's ill health, the Sherbatskys consult numerous doctors. Dolly attempts to talk with Kitty about her feelings. Kitty is initially resistant but then breaks down in tears. Dolly intuits that Kitty has rejected Levin only to be forsaken by Vronsky and that the pain of this turn of events has devastated her. Anna frequents a different social circle now, preferring the company of Vronsky's worldly cousin Betsy Strevskoy to that of her former companion, the morally righteous Lydia Ivanovna. At a party, rumors about Anna's liaison with Vronsky spread, and Anna falls prey to some vicious gossipers, though others defend her. Anna and Vronsky meet at Betsy's. Anna begs Vronsky to drop the relationship and asks for Kitty's forgiveness. Vronsky affirms his hope for happiness with Anna as her eyes assure him that she loves him. Karenin enters but soon leaves, while Anna decides to stay at Betsy's for supper. At home, Karenin meditates on his feeling that something is amiss. He feels jealous, though he knows jealousy is illogical. When he tries to picture Anna's personal life to himself, he becomes confused and uncomfortable. When Anna arrives home from Betsy's, her husband confronts her, warning her about the risk of her behavior. Anna becomes mildly indignant, affirming her right to a little merriment. Karenin states that something should lie hidden in one's soul, implying that Anna's attraction to Vronsky is one such thing. Karenin tells Anna he loves her, but she wonders what this means. She tells him she wants to go to bed and withdraws. The narrative skips forward almost a year to the point at which Anna and Vronsky have finally consummated their affair. After the deed is done, Anna sobs, saying that all she has now is Vronsky. She tries to drive away her thoughts. Sleeping, she dreams that both Karenin and Vronsky are her husbands. Meanwhile, Levin's sadness about Kitty's rejection lingers. He busies himself with farm planning on his estate and sends his brother Nikolai, who suffers from tuberculosis, off to a spa in Europe for treatment. Levin feels frustrated with his farm work and with the stubbornness and stupidity of his peasant workers. When the bell rings one day, Levin wonders whether his brother Nikolai has come for a visit. He is pleased to see that it is Stiva Oblonsky. Levin, grateful for a potential source of information about Kitty, takes Stiva out to hunt birds. Unexpectedly, Levin bursts out a question about Kitty, unable to restrain his curiosity. When Stiva replies that Kitty is ill, Levin is oddly pleased, thinking that he has had an effect on her. On the way home, Levin and Stiva discuss a forest that Stiva plans to sell. Levin claims the deal is shady and accuses the merchant buyer of intending to cheat Stiva. Visiting the merchant along with Stiva, Levin refuses to shake the merchant's hand. Stiva makes the sale anyway and later playfully accuses Levin of snobbery. Vronsky continues life as usual in his regiment. Though he never lets slip that he loves Anna, the whole of St. Petersburg high society knows about his feelings for her. The women who once praised Anna as righteous now wait for a chance to sling mud in her face. Vronsky hears about an upcoming officer's steeplechase, so he buys a new mare named Frau to ride in one of the races. On the day of the races, Vronsky visits Frau in the stable, and she grows more agitated as he approaches. Vronsky reflects on everyone pestering him about Anna. Just before the horse race, Vronsky visits Anna at her nearby summer house. She has been thinking about him and seems somewhat distraught. Her son, Seryosha, is absent, as Vronsky had hoped. Anna informs Vronsky that she is pregnant. He urges her to leave her husband and live with him instead. Vronsky cannot imagine how Anna can wish to continue living in such deceit, not realizing that the reason is her love for her son. Suddenly, Vronsky realizes he is late for the races. Vronsky arrives at the racetrack just as Frau is being led out of the stable. Vronsky's brother, Alexander, approaches him and tells him to answer a letter their mother has recently sent. Vronsky is expected to do well in the race, as his only serious rival is another officer, Makotin, who rides a horse named Gladiator. Nonetheless, Vronsky is agitated. The race begins. After a slow start, Frau outpaces all the horses except Gladiator. At last, Frau pulls ahead of Gladiator and is in the lead. Vronsky is ecstatic. But during a jump over a ditch, he shifts in the saddle incorrectly, causing Frau to fall. The horse breaks her back and must be shot. Meanwhile, the Karenin's relationship on the surface has remained just the same as before. Unable to face or admit his own feelings for his wife, Karenin treats Anna with an offended hostility. He hardly ever sees her as she goes away for the summer, living near Betsy Tversky's home in the countryside. At the officer's steeplechase, which Anna and Betsy attend together, Karenin observes that his wife only has eyes for Vronsky. When Vronsky falls, Anna weeps with alarm and then with relief after hearing that he is safe. Karenin offers to take Anna home, but she prefers to stay. Karenin tells Anna that her visible grief upon Vronsky's fall is highly improper. Finally, on the carriage ride home, Anna frankly confesses to Karenin that she loves Vronsky and hates Karenin. The shocked Karenin demands that she continues to observe the outward conventions of marriage for appearance's sake until a suitable solution is found. Meanwhile, Kitty and some of her family are at a spa in Germany. The Sherbatskys enjoy socializing with European aristocrats as they await an improvement in Kitty's health. One of the spa guests is a snobby, elderly Russian invalid named Madame Stahl, who is famously devout and is accompanied by a young girl named Varenka. Kitty likes Varenka immensely but is nervous about meeting her. Kitty's mother learns that two spa guests, a tattered Russian gentleman and his female companion, are in fact Levin's brother Nikolai and Nikolay's girlfriend. One day, Kitty's mother is so impressed with Varenka that she allows Kitty to meet the girl. Kitty is delighted, and both mother and daughter are enchanted by Varenka's goodness. Following Varenka's example of charity, Kitty throws herself into devotion and good deeds. She befriends a sad painter named Petrov, visiting him often. However, Petrov's wife eventually becomes jealous of Kitty, who is upset that her good intentions have gone astray. Near the end of Kitty's treatment, her father, Prince Sherbatsky, returns from his travels elsewhere in Germany. He entertains his family and various others at the spa with his easy manner and funny jokes. The prince chats with Madame Stahl, who he claims is bedridden not from illness but from vanity, merely because her legs are stubby. Her idealized, pious image of Madame Stahl deflated, Kitty never sees the old woman in the same way again. Levin's half-brother, Sergei Kosnichev, takes a break from his intellectual work by visiting Levin at his country estate. Whereas Kosnichev sees the countryside as a place of leisure, Levin sees it as a place of hard labor. The brothers also have different attitudes toward the peasantry. Kosnichev is naively affectionate, whereas Levin has a close familiarity with the peasants that makes him occasionally critical. But if one were to ask Levin whether or not he loved the peasantry, he would be unable to answer. On his walks with Levin in the country, Kosnichev waxes lyrical about the beauty of nature, while Levin prefers simply to look at his surroundings without comment. The men discuss the seems to be bored and sad state of local affairs. Kosnichev wonders why nothing good comes from the money landowners pay to local bureaucrats, as there are no school, doctors, or midwives to show for these payments. He chastises Levin for withdrawing from the Stimstubo, where he might have exerted a positive impact. Levin asserts that such bureaucratic work was futile and frustrating for him. The next day, Levin works through his troubles by doing hard labor, mowing his fields alongside 42 peasant men. The work exhilarates him, and he feels a higher force moving his scythe. Back home, Kosnichev hands Levin a letter from Dolly, in which she writes that she is at her nearby estate at Yergoshovo. Dolly has moved to the country to reduce household expenses, but she finds the hardships of rural life almost unbearable. Only with the help of the nanny Matriona is Dolly able to set up house decently. One day, Levin visits Dolly, who eagerly broaches the subject of Kitty. Levin reveals that he had proposed to Kitty and been refused. Contrary to Levin's assumption, Dolly did not already know about his rejected proposal. Dolly affirms that Kitty is suffering even more than Levin. Dolly attempts to talk about the future of a relationship between Levin and Kitty, but Levin gets angry, saying that such possibilities are dead forever. The next day, Levin inspects his hay reserves, finding that the peasants have been cheating him of a considerable portion of his income, although they all cheerfully deny his claim. Despite this annoyance, Levin feels that the countryside is where he belongs and that he is not destined to marry. But when he glimpses Kitty passing by him in a carriage one day, his love for her suddenly returns. Karenin sticks to his routine doggedly after Anna's revelation of her adultery, attempting to live as if nothing has changed. Inwardly, however, the pain he feels and represses leads him to curse Anna as a depraved woman. He also grows more distant and cold toward his son, Seryosha. Karenin recites to himself the long list of men whom women have ruined over the course of history, from ancient to modern times. He considers challenging Vronsky to a duel but rejects the idea out of fear of pistols. Karenin reasons that the best punishment for Anna is to keep her bound to him, unable to divorce. He writes a letter to her explaining this plan to her formally. Anna is utterly surprised by Karenin's decision, disappointed that the divorce for which she yearns will not come to pass. She is enraged at the prospect of prolonging her life of lies with Karenin. She writes a letter to him, telling him she is leaving the house and taking her son with her, but in the end, she does not send the letter. At a party at Betsy's, Anna talks to some young members of the fashionable St. Petersburg set and is struck by how bored they are despite their merry lives. One of the party guests, Lisa, asks how happy one can be lolling around on a sofa all day. Vronsky brings his financial accounts into balance. Despite rumors of his huge fortune, he actually leads a hand-to-mouth existence. However, he adheres to a rule he imposed on himself long before and refuses to ask his mother for a loan. Vronsky obeys his rules of conduct rigorously, and it is only with the recent appearance of Anna in his life that he has felt conflicted about proper behavior. Upon learning of Anna's pregnancy, Vronsky feels that he should resign from military service. He is reluctant to give up his professional ambitions, however, especially because his old school friend and friendly rival, Serpukhowskoy, has recently found fame. Serpukhowskoy warns Vronsky to be wary of women as they can hold a man back from his full career potential. Vronsky sets off for Anna's country house where she has arranged a meeting with him. On the way, he feels he loves her more than ever, and his pulse quickens upon his first glimpse of her. Anna reveals to Vronsky that she has told her husband about their adulterous affair. Vronsky fears a duel, but after reading Karenin's letter to Anna, he does not know how to react. Vronsky thinks about Serpukhowskoy's advice to him, but knows he cannot tell Anna about it. He advises Anna to abandon Seryosha, her son with Karenin, and put an end to the humiliating situation by obtaining a divorce. Anna burst out sobbing, saying that she is not humiliated but proud. Karenin delivers a speech before the Commission on the Relocation of the Russian native tribes, and it is a brilliant success. Anna goes to her home in St. Petersburg to talk with her husband. She reaffirms to him that she is one at fault but says she cannot change anything. Karenin, exclusively concerned about defending his honor, makes only one demand, that Vronsky never set foot in his home. Anna and Karenin part. Meanwhile, Levin has come to loot the farm work he once enjoyed. He feels worn down from his unending struggle with the peasants over their reluctance to adopt new technological innovations for farming. More tormenting is the nearby presence of Kitty at Yergoshovo. Levin yearns to see her but feels he cannot. Dolly tries to lure Levin to visit and encounter Kitty by requesting to borrow a saddle from him. Levin merely sends the saddle by courier without visiting Dolly's house personally. The torture of being near Kitty but not with her eventually becomes unbearable, so Levin takes off to visit his friend Sivyevsky, who lives far away. On the way, Levin stops to eat at the home of a prosperous peasant. The peasant and his healthy family impress Levin, as does the farmer's obvious financial success. The old farmer asserts that landowners cannot rely on hired men, for peasants handle a farm best on their own. At Sviasky's house, Levin's host seems intent on arranging marriage between Levin and his sister-in-law. Levin does his best to avoid talking to the sister-in-law, knowing in his heart that he can marry only Kitty or no one at all. At dinner, Sviasky entertains two old-fashioned landowners who miss the bygone days of serfdom in Russia. One of the landowners claims that farming was better in those days, and that the emancipation of the serfs has ruined Russia. Levin meditates on the fact that, in virtually all aspects of Sviazhsky's life, there are huge contradictions between what Sviazhsky inwardly believes and what he outwardly lives. Sviazhsky argues that all farming should be done under a rational scientific system, whereas one of the landowner guests asserts that farming simply requires a firm authority looming over the peasantry. Levin agrees that his attempts to introduce farming innovations to the peasants have been disastrous. Sviazhsky maintains that serfdom is a thing of the past and that hard labor is the future that all Russian landowners must accept. He asserts that education is the key to winning over the peasants, but Levin disagrees. Thinking about the matter afterward, Levin believes the answer is to treat the peasants not as an abstract workforce, but as specifically Russian peasants, whose specific traditions and nature must be factored into all decisions involving labor. Levin is determined to put his new theory into practice on his estate, making the peasants financial partners in the harvest. The peasants resist, however, suspecting Levin of somehow trying to cheat them. As Levin makes plans to visit farms in Western Europe to research his new agricultural theory, his brother Nikolai visits. Nikolai, who is even sicker than before, has abandoned Maria Nikolaevna. Since only one room in the house is heated, Levin allows Nikolai to sleep in his own bedroom. Nikolai's incessant coughing and cursing keep Levin awake all hours of the night. With his brother obviously dying, Levin can think of nothing but death. He gets up to examine his graying temples, affirming that he has a few good years left in his life. He goes back to bed, wondering whether there's anything he can do to help his brother. The next day, conversation between the brothers is strained, as the despairing and self-pitying Nikolai purposely irritates Levin by mocking his ideas about agricultural improvement. Nikolai leaves, but at the last minute asks for Levin's forgiveness. Levin later meets a friend to whom he speaks about death. Levin is aware that he must live out his life to the end, come what may. Vronsky's conversation with Anna at the country house is the first hint at a decline in the intimacy of the relations. For the first time in the novel, we're aware of Vronsky having a thought that he fails to share with Anna. His memory of Sir Fox's warning about the dangerous effects of women on men's ambition. Tolstoy heightens the drama of this moment at the country house by showing us Vronsky's thought and then telling us of his inability to communicate it to Anna. Sir Fox's advice itself is not necessarily valid, for Anna has proved herself a capable wife to the extremely ambitious Karenin. What is more important is that the advice cannot be shared, which signals the formation of a boundary between Vronsky's mind and Anna's. As the novel progresses, this boundary becomes increasingly insurmountable and foreshadows the end of their union. Another hint of a bleak future comes in Vronsky's reference to Anna's humiliation, a very public form of shame. Anna rightly rejects this term, saying she does not feel humiliation. She is aware only of love, a private emotion. Vronsky's focus on humiliation suggests that he feels beholden to the pressure of social values, a pressure that represents a clear danger to their love. Just as Vronsky's rationality comes as a surprise, so do Levin's thoughts of mortality and of his own death. Though Levin is a healthy and vigorous man ablaze with future plans, Tolstoy has him meditate on death for several reasons. First, Levin's thoughts reveal his deep empathy with his critically ill brother. Like Anna, Levin is unable to distance himself from the suffering of anyone close to him. Second, Levin's reflections on mortality endow him with a wise humility that other characters, such as Karenin and even Vronsky, lack. Levin is no frailer than they, yet some vainglorious quality about those other men makes it hard to imagine either of them contemplating his own demise. Even Vronsky, who has come near death in the horse race, has not let the experience noticeably alter his views. Levin is different. His closeness to his ailing brother causes him to realize and accept his human nature and limited lifespan. Finally, Levin's thoughts of death align him with Anna, who thinks about death the first moment we meet her after the casualty in the train station. Levin and Anna are linked not only in the intensity of their lives but also in the recognition of the closeness of death. The Karenins continue to live in the same house but are almost completely estranged from each other. Karenin makes it a rule to see Anna every day in order to avoid spreading rumors of separation among the servants, but he never dines at home. Both husband and wife fervently hope that their painful situation is temporary. Vronsky endures a dull week entertaining a visiting foreign dignitary who wishes to experience the true spirit of Russia. Carousing with gypsy girls, the foreigner believes he is discovering Russian culture. Vronsky is pained by the resemblance between the foreigner and himself. Both are healthy, confident, rather empty noblemen. Returning home one night, Vronsky finds a note from Anna saying that she must see him, inviting him to her home when Karenin is to be at a meeting. Vronsky goes to Anna at the appointed time, but is shocked to run into Karenin, whose meeting has ended early. Anna is grouchy, making barbed remarks about Vronsky's night with the foreigner and the gypsy girls. Vronsky is sadly aware of how Anna has changed, both morally and physically. She's irritable and has put on weight. Anna erupts in anger toward Karenin, calling him a puppet and an administrative machine and reproaching his lack of guts. She says that in his place she would have killed a wife like herself. Vronsky attributes Anna's moodiness to her pregnancy and asks when the baby is due. Anna says that it should not be long. She adds that soon everything will be resolved and she will die shortly. Vronsky accuses Anna of speaking nonsense, but she declares that she has had a prophetic dream, a vision of an old peasant man rummaging in a sack and talking about the necessity of beating iron. The peasant in the dream told her that she would die in childbirth. Karenin passes a sleepless night after his run-in with Vronsky, angered that Anna has violated the only condition he placed on her, that she never receive Vronsky in Karenin's house. Karenin tells Anna he plans to initiate divorce proceedings and seizes her love letters from Vronsky to use as evidence. Anna begs Karenin to allow her to keep custody of Seryosha. Karenin replies that although he no longer loves the boy, he will take him anyway. The next day, Karenin visits a divorce lawyer who assumes Karenin wishes to pursue a mutually consenting divorce. Karenin explains that he wants to prove involuntary exposure of an adulterous affair using the love letters as evidence. The lawyer warns him that such cases require the involvement of religious authorities and that often letters are not sufficient evidence. The lawyer asks Karenin for freedom to proceed with the specifics of the divorce as he thinks best, and Karenin agrees. After being thwarted by a rival at work, Karenin decides to set out for the provinces in an attempt to redeem his professional reputation. He encounters Stiva and Dolly one day and treats them coolly. Stiva, who is in good spirits and is enjoying his new ballerina mistress, invites Karenin, Levin, Kitty, and others to a dinner party. Karenin initially declines, revealing his plans to divorce Anna. Though Stiva is shocked and worried about his sister, he insists that Karenin come nonetheless. At the dinner party, Karenin is cold toward the others. Even so, the food is excellent and the party is successful. Kitty and Levin see each other for the first time since the failed marriage proposal, and their mutual love is overwhelmingly evident. Over dinner, the guests discuss education and the rights of women. Over dinner at the Oblonskys', a guest makes a remark that displeases Karenin, who leaves the table. He finds Dolly in the drawing room and reveals to her his firm plans for divorce. Hearing that Anna has cheated on Karenin, Dolly protests that Anna will be ruined. Karenin claims there is nothing he can do. At the same dinner, Levin and Kitty speak to each other for the first time since her rejection of his marriage proposal. Clearly still caring for each other greatly, they play a word game on a card table through which they apologize for each other for their past errors. Levin proposes to Kitty again and she accepts. Later, Levin tells his brother Sergei of his engagement and wanders sleeplessly in the streets overjoyed. When morning comes, Levin visits the Sherbatsky house and embraces Kitty. In happy days, Levin goes off to buy flowers and presents for the engagement celebration. Levin, wishing to be fully honest with Kitty, shows her his journals, which divulge the fact that he is agnostic and has not been chaste prior to marriage. Kitty is upset but ultimately forgiving. Karenin is passed over for a government post he has been coveting. Just after receiving this bad news, he receives a telegram announcing that Anna is gravely ill. He arrives to learn that Anna has delivered a baby girl and that she is suffering from a fever from which she is not expected to recover. Vronsky is present at Anna's bedside. Anna is sure she is dying, so she begs Karenin for forgiveness. She also implores Karenin to forgive Vronsky, which Karenin tearfully does. When Vronsky is about to leave the house, Karenin tells him that he has forgiven Anna and will stay by her side. Vronsky departs with a feeling that his love for Anna, which has flagged lately, is reviving. Back at his home, he cannot sleep, tormented by the possibility of Anna's death. Only half aware of his actions, Vronsky aims a pistol at his chest and fires. He is gravely wounded but survives, as one of his servants quickly discovers him and sends him for doctors. Karenin, meanwhile, is surprised by how sincerely he was able to forgive Anna and by the tenderness he feels toward her newborn daughter, who is also named Anna. Later, Karenin overhears a conversation between Anna and Betsy Tverskaya. Betsy implores Anna to say goodbye to Vronsky before he leaves for the provincial capital of Tashkent, where he is to be stationed. Anna refuses, saying that there's no point in seeing Vronsky again. On the way out, Betsy begs Karenin to allow Vronsky to visit Anna one last time. Karenin answers that such a matter is solely his wife's decision. In desperate grief, Anna privately affirms to Karenin that there is no point in seeing Vronsky again. Karenin says he's willing to allow the affair to continue, provided that the family and children are not disgraced. Stiva arrives at the Karenin house. Anna privately tells him that she cannot stand Karenin any longer. Stiva says the problem is simple. Anna married someone whom she did not love and who was 20 years her senior. Now she loves another man and she must decide whether or not to stay with her husband. Anna says she does not know what to do. Stiva speaks to Karenin, who shows him a letter he has begun writing to Anna. The letter tells Anna that the decision about the future of their marriage is entirely in her hands. Stiva says that only divorce will satisfy Anna, but Karenin reminds him of the disgrace she will suffer if she chooses such a path. Stiva mentions that Karenin could allow Anna to escape public shame by taking responsibility for the disgrace himself, by pretending that it was he, rather than Anna, who committed adultery. Karenin tearfully says that he is willing to accept this option. Vronsky, hearing that Karenin has granted a divorce, visits Anna. They acknowledge their mutual love. Anna says that Karenin is being too generous with her, so she cannot accept his magnanimity in granting her wish for divorce proceedings. Vronsky resigns his commission, and he and Anna set off on a trip abroad, abandoning the idea of divorce. As Levin and Kitty's wedding date is set, Levin remains in his blissful days. He performs all the duties expected of him, but is almost mad with joy. Stiva reminds Levin that he must go on confession before his wedding. Levin meets with the priest and confesses that he doubts everything, including the existence of God. The priest sternly warns Levin that the Christianity of his future offspring is at stake. Later, Levin enjoys a bachelor party with his brother Sergei and Sergei's university friend Katavasov. The bachelors ask Levin if he is prepared to give up his freedom for the constraints of marriage. Levin, feeling insecure and wondering why Kitty should ever love him at all, asks Kitty whether she wants to go through with the wedding. They have a brief argument but are reconciled. That evening, the wedding guests await the groom in the church. Levin is late because a mix-up involving his clothes has left him without a proper shirt to wear. The ceremony is delayed and the guests become impatient, but Levin finally arrives at the church. Kitty cannot understand the priest's words as she hears them, for she is swept away by love. Levin cries during the ceremony. The wedding concludes majestically and Levin and Kitty leave for his country estate. Vronsky and Anna, meanwhile, travel in Italy for 3 months together and settle down and rent a palazzo. Vronsky, seeking distraction, is delighted to meet an old school friend, Golenishev. Golenishev and Anna get along well. Vronsky listens as Golenishev expounds on the book he is writing, and Anna tells Golenishev that Vronsky has taken up painting. Anna, for her part, has been very happy. Far from Russia, she feels no more disgrace. Vronsky is less contented, however. All his desires are satisfied, so he misses desire itself. He begins to paint a portrait of Anna. Hearing of a Russian painter named Mikhailov who lives in their town, Vronsky reflects on the new generation of Russian intellectuals who have talent but lack education. Anna, intrigued, proposes visiting Mikhailov. When Vronsky and Anna arrive at Mikhailov's studio, the artist is flattered to receive attention from wealthy Russians. He shows them a painting in progress, a scene from the life of Jesus Christ. Anna and Vronsky praise Mikhailov's rendering of Pontius Pilate, and Anna delights in the expression of pity on Jesus' face. The visitors enjoy even more a landscape painting of Russian boys relaxing by a river. Vronsky asks whether the latter painting is for sale and hires Mikhilov to paint Anna's portrait. Vronsky abandons his own portrait of Anna and becomes dissatisfied with their Italian life. Levin slowly adjusts to married life. He imagines that Kitty's need only to be loved, forgetting that she has desires and aspirations of her own. Kitty throws herself into housekeeping with gusto in a way that initially annoys Levin, but then pleases him. Quarrels occasionally erupt. One day, Levin gets lost on the way home from the fields, and Kitty is jealous and suspicious of where he has been. He is offended but then forgives her. Meanwhile, Levin continues work on his book about the Russian agricultural system, but his slow progress distresses him. He chastises himself for being spoiled by married life and silently reproaches Kitty for her lack of interest in anything other than housekeeping. Levin receives a letter from Maria Nikolaevna saying that she is back with his brother Nikolai, who is dying of consumption. Levin says he must visit Nikolai, and Kitty insists on going with him. Levin does not want her to come, resenting his lack of freedom and shuddering at the idea of Kitty meeting a former prostitute. Levin and Kitty fight, but finally he allows her to come along. In a dingy hotel in the provinces, Levin meets Nikolai, who is clearly at death's door. Kitty insists on seeing Nikolai too, and he greets her pleasantly. Levin cannot bear to look at Nikolai, but the more practical Kitty immediately gets down to work to lessen the dying man's suffering, displaying remarkable compassion and empathy for him. Kitty's tenderness touches Nikolai. Levin meditates on how he fears death more than Kitty, even though he is more intelligent than she. He concludes that he is self-centered, whereas she is selfless. The next day, Nikolai takes communion and feels better, passing a half hour without coughing. But then the cough returns. Nikolai tells Kitty, whom he calls by her Russian name, Katya, to leave the room as he will die soon. He continues to linger between life and death, however. Kitty, meanwhile, feels ill and vomits. After several tedious days of waiting, Nikolai finally passes away. The doctor tells Kitty that she is vomiting because she is pregnant. Meanwhile, Karenin cannot grasp what has led him to his current misery. Asked to pay one of Anna's overdue bills, he nearly breaks down. His career is at a standstill. The narrator fills us in on Karenin's childhood. An orphan, Karenin grew up with many awards and distinctions, but without intimacy in his life. Now his friend Lydia Ivanovna urges him to trust in Jesus and offers to run his household. Forlornly in love with Karenin herself, Lydia Ivanovna has replaced erotic passion with religious love. However, she is spiteful toward Anna, refusing to acknowledge Anna's letter pleading to see Seryosha. Lydia Ivanovna informs Karenin that Anna is in St. Petersburg, which makes Karenin glum. He asserts that he cannot thwart Anna's maternal love for her son. Lydia Ivanovna maliciously asks whether Anna truly loves her son. Seryosha's birthday arrives and his joy in getting gifts is heightened by his pride that his father has received an official award. The boy bombards his tutor with questions about his father's award, but the tutor insists he concentrate on schoolwork. Seryosha wonders why the tutor does not love him. Lydia Ivanovna has told Seryosha that his mother is dead to him, but he still hopes to see Anna again. Karenin visits Seryosha and quizzes him on his religious lessons. Seryosha does not do well, and Karenin is disappointed in his son's progress. Upon returning to St. Petersburg, Vronsky and Anna stay in a fine hotel. They hope to resume their social life but are thwarted. Everyone shuns them, even Betsy Tverskaya, who explains that she cannot risk the public shame of socializing with Anna. Anna receives Karenin's denial of her plea to see Seryosha and is devastated. Determined to see her son anyway, she buys him toys for his birthday and visits the Karenin home one morning, hiding her face until she has entered. The servants recognize Anna and bring her to Seryosha. Mother and son chat and Anna cries with joy and regret. Seryosha's former nanny, also visiting him, informs Anna that Karenin is soon to enter the room. Anna hurries away but encounters Karenin on her way out. As she leaves, she realizes that she never got a chance to give Seryosha his toys. Returning to the hotel in a daze, Anna is unable to fathom her present situation. Moreover, she suddenly feels less love toward her infant daughter Annie. Anna mentally reproaches Vronsky for abandoning her lately. Vronsky returns to the hotel to find Anna with Princess Oblonskaya, an old and married aunt of Anna's with a bad reputation. Anna announces that she plans to attend the opera that evening. Vronsky begs her not to, warning her of the fact that the members of high society at the theater will scorn and humiliate her. He believes that she wishes to deliberately provoke and insult conventional society. Nevertheless, Anna leaves for the opera. Vronsky follows later and watches in horror as Anna is insulted by acquaintances in the neighboring box. Anna returns home angry and desperate. Vronsky reassures her of his love and the two depart for the countryside. Dolly, unhappy with her own rundown estate, moves in with Levin and Kitty for the summer. Kitty's friend Varenka and Levi's half-brother Sergei are also present. Sergei is friendly despite the others' awe of his fame. Dolly and Kitty even discuss the possibility of setting him up with Varenka. Levin is skeptical of this idea, explaining that Sergei is used to a spiritual life whereas Varenka is more earthy. Levin tells Kitty that he envies Sergei, who lives for duty and thus can reach satisfaction. Kitty asks why Levin is not satisfied himself. Levin mentions his work frustrations but affirms he is happy overall. Sergei and Varenka do indeed like each other greatly, and Sergei fantasizes about proposing marriage. One day, the two go out picking mushrooms together, and both of them suddenly realize Sergei is on the verge of proposing. At the last minute, however, he is unable to bring himself to do so, as he wishes to be loyal to the memory of a deceased lover from his youth. The opportunity gone, Sergei and Varenka both realize they will never marry each other. One day, Stiva arrives with a friend, the handsome Wislavsky. Stiva mentions that Wislavsky has visited Anna. Dolly asserts that she will visit Anna too, though Kitty is reluctant to go. Wislavsky flirts with Kitty, which makes Levin insanely jealous. Levin and Kitty quarrel and Levin apologizes, promising to make Wislavsky feel welcome on their hunting trip the next day. Setting out with Stiva and Wislavsky, Levin is ashamed of his earlier anger, for he now finds Wislavsky comical and good-natured. But once they begin hunting, the presence of the somewhat hapless Wislavsky again bothers Levin, distracting him and causing him to shoot badly. The others bag far more game, and Levin's irritation grows. Wislavsky stupidly sets his gun off accidentally and gets their cart stuck in a marsh. The men discuss a railroad magnate neighbor whose fortune Levin disdains, considering it ill-gotten, the product of financial tricks, not hard work. Stiva mocks Levin for being a noble man who does not work for his fortune, and Levin is irked. Levin goes to bed frustrated, while the other two go off in pursuit of farm girls, which Steva says is acceptable as long as his wife does not find out. Waking early the next morning, Levin goes off hunting alone. His dog flashes out several enormous snipe which Levin kills effortlessly. Delighted, Levin returns hours later with 19 birds. His joy disperses, however, when he learns that Steva and Wislavsky have eaten all the food. Kitty then discusses her need to go to Moscow to see an obstetrician. Levin initially resists, believing doctors to be unnecessary, but finally assents. Wislavsky engages Kitty in a conversation about whether love can be above social conventions, but she finds his tone objectionable. Kitty and Levin quarrel and make up once more. Finally, Levin, again annoyed at Wislavsky's flirtation with Kitty, kicks him out of the house, despite his awareness that such an action is ungracious. Dolly sticks to her plan of visiting Anna. She plans to hire her own horses rather than ask for Levin's, as she is reluctant to seek his aid for a potentially shameful mission. Levin, however, insists on giving Dolly his horses. During the trip, Dolly reflects on love and marriage, remembering a peasant girl's comment that motherhood is bondage. She understands Anna's need to live her life on her own terms and wonders whether she could love and be loved in a real way. En route to Anna's house, Dolly encounters Anna Wislavsky, Princess of Lanskaya, and Levin's friend Shivasky on horseback. Dolly is startled by Anna's boldness in riding horseback, which society considers improper for ladies. Dolly dislikes Princess of Lanskaya, who sponges off of her rich relatives. Dolly knows that she looks older than Anna. Anna speaks of her great, unforgivable happiness. Having survived past fears and torments, she says she only wants to live. She talks about Vronsky's estate management and the first-class hospital he is building for the local peasant community. Dolly stays in a room that Anna calls inferior, but that is in fact very luxurious. Dolly feels very self-conscious about her shabby clothes. Anna presents her baby daughter, who is illegitimate but technically a Karenin. Dolly is troubled by the child's disagreeable governess and by Anna's ignorance of nursery matters. Indeed, Anna even admits she feels superfluous in the infant's upbringing. Overall, Anna's life pleases Dolly, who envies Anna's freedom and love. In private, Vronsky implores Dolly to persuade Anna to get a divorce, which Karenin had agreed to earlier, so that Vronsky and Anna might petition the emperor for a legal adoption of their daughter. Dolly promises to speak to Anna later. Over a costly dinner, the group discusses such topics as American efficiency in building, government abuses, and the Sibstowo system. When someone mentions that Levin has retired from Sibstowo activity, Vronsky asserts that it is important for a nobleman to fulfill his duties as he does in serving as justice of the peace. Dolly, annoyed by Vronsky's slighting of Levin, affirms Levin's responsible character. Anna remarks that Vronsky's official duties are distancing him from her. Playing croquet afterward, Dolly dislikes Wislavsky's flirtations with Anna. Later, Anna inquires about Levin, wanting the best for Kitty. Dolly mentions Anna's possible divorce for the sake of future children. Anna announces that because of her illness, she can have no more children, saying she thinks it is for the best. Dolly wonders how Anna will hold on to Vronsky when her beauty inevitably fades. Anna says she cannot humiliate herself by writing to Karenin for a divorce. Dolly suddenly reflects on her own family life with warmth, noting that Anna takes medicine to fall asleep. Rather than stay several days as planned, Dolly decides to return home the next day. When Vronsky announces he must travel to Kashin province for some important local elections, Anna receives the news with a strange calm. Levin, now living in Moscow because of Kitty's pregnancy, also goes to the elections. He is frustrated by the bureaucratic proceedings, but Sergei explains to him the importance of the elections, in which the old guard marshal of nobility will be replaced by a younger man more supportive of the Simstobo system. When the vote is cast, the younger party wins. Levin runs into the landowner he met during his visit to Sibiaski's house and has a conversation with him. The landowner says that the elections have little significance and reports that he is still farming at a net loss. In fact, he is pessimistic about the state of Russian landowners in general. Levin tells Vyazky, who is also present at the election, that the local court is an idiotic institution. Soon, Levin grows dejected and yearns to flee the elections. Ultimately, a venomous nobleman named Nebedovsky is elected marshal of the nobility. Vronsky hosts a party for the victor but receives a worried note from Anna telling him to return home immediately as their infant daughter is ill. At home, Anna fumes over her utter lack of freedom, her inability to travel on a whim as Vronsky can. Vronsky returns and asks why Anna is irritable, once again affirming his love for her. Anna says she refuses to be separated from Vronsky again. She agrees to write Karenin for a divorce, which they expect him to permit. In Moscow, Levin and Kitty await the birth of their child. Kitty notes how anxious and wary Levin is in the city compared to the countryside. He dislikes the men's club and its attendants socializing, but has few other ways to pass the time. In her condition, Kitty rarely goes out. On one occasion, however, she does leave the house and encounters Vronsky, whom she addresses calmly, pleased at her ability to master her former romantic feelings for him. Levin is uncomfortably aware of the expenses of city life, noting that the cost of his city servants' uniforms could pay for 2 summer workers on his farm. He meets the scholars Katavasov and Metrov and discusses his book on Russian agriculture with them. Metrov is agreeable but understands agricultural issues solely in terms of capital and wages, ignoring the cultural factors that are central to Levin's thinking. Levin concludes that intellectual advancement can come only from each scholar following his own ideas to the end. He leaves to visit Lvov, the diplomat husband of Kitty's sister Natalie. Lvov complains about the studying required to keep up with his children's education, which he supervises. Levin then goes to a concert and hears an orchestral piece based on Shakespeare's King Lear. Levin dislikes the piece's random connection of desperate moods, and the audience's enthusiastic applause perplexes him. Later at a reception, Levin discusses a recently concluded trial and finds himself repeating words that he heard someone else say the day before. Then Levin goes to the club where he enjoys lewd and drunken conversation with Stiva, Vronsky, and others, laughing so loudly that others turn to look. Levin decides he likes Vronsky. Stiva asks Levin whether he likes the gentleman's club, their temple of idleness, and notes how lazy some of the members are. Levin gambles and loses 40 rubles. Stiva suddenly proposes a surprise visit to Anna, whom Levin has never met. Levin agrees. Stiva explains Anna's loneliness in Moscow, saying that she passes her time writing a children's book and assisting in the education of the daughter of an impoverished English family. Stiva and Levin reach Anna's home where Levin immediately notices Mykolov's portrait of her. Anna delights Levin with her sincerity, beauty, and intelligence. The two discuss a variety of topics in an easy and familiar way, and Levin is amazed by Anna's grace and facility in conversation. Levin asks why Anna supports the English girl but not Russian school children. Anna replies that she only loves this particular girl and love is paramount. On parting, Anna tells Levin that she does not wish Kitty to forgive her, for forgiveness would be possible only if Kitty were to live through the same nightmare Anna has experienced. Levin blushes and agrees to tell Kitty. Levin returns home aware of his fascination with and attraction to Anna. He tells Kitty he has met Anna and Kitty jealously provokes a quarrel. Meanwhile, Anna, alone, wonders why Vronsky is colder to her than Levin. When Vronsky returns, she questions him for preferring his male friends to her. Vronsky notes the clear hostility in her tone. Anna speaks vaguely and ominously about a disaster she is nearing and about her fear of herself. Surprising even himself, Levin grows accustomed to his expensive and superficial city life. One night, Kitty awakens him with news that her labor has begun. Levin is dazed, aware only of her suffering and the need to alleviate it. He picks up the doctor, frustrated by delays. During the long labor, Levin becomes convinced that Kitty will die during childbirth. When the doctor announces that the birth has taken place, Levin can hardly believe he has a son. Kitty is fine, but the sight of the red, shrieking infant makes Levin feel a bizarre mix of pity and revulsion. The Oblonskys' finances worsen and Dolly demands control over her portion of their fortune. The family does not have enough money to pay the bills. Steve resolves to get a cashier appointment on a railroad commission. He goes to St. Petersburg to speak to Karenin about the job, as well as about his sister Anna. Karenin claims that Anna's life no longer interests him but promises to give Steva a definitive answer about the divorce the next day. On his way out, Steva meets Shiryosha, who is now an older schoolboy who claims not to remember his mother. Steva then visits Betsky Tverskaya and talks to the free-thinking Princess Myagsky. The latter calls Karenin stupid, saying he has become a follower of a famous French psychic named Landau. Steva visits Lydia Ivanovna and meets Karenin and Landau. Steva tries to talk about Anna, but Lydia will talk only of religion. They discuss theology at length. Lydia believes that man is saved by faith alone, not, as Steva believes, through good deeds. When Lydia reads aloud from a religious tract, Steva and Landau fall into a slumber. Steva awakens to hear Landau, who is allegedly talking in his sleep, tell an identified woman to leave the room. The next day, Karenin informs Steva that he has decided, based on Landau's dream speech, to refuse Anna's request for a divorce. Anna and Vronsky continue to reside in Moscow, though their relationship is tense and unhappy. Anna is deeply jealous and paranoid, feeling that Vronsky no longer loves her and making unfounded assertions that he must be involved with another woman. Anna knows she's being unfair but cannot control her emotions. She and Vronsky argue about women's rights and women's education, which he dismisses. Vronsky tries to hide Steva's telegram informing him that Karenin will not grant a divorce, but Anna demands to know Karenin's decision and says she accepts it. Anna decides that she and Vronsky must go to the country immediately. Vronsky agrees to go but says he must finish some business with his mother first. Anna demands that he go now or not at all, and she even slices Vronsky's mother. Vronsky asks Anna to respect his mother, but Anna criticizes the whole idea of respect, calling it a replacement for love. Anna becomes more miserable and Vronsky's attempts to appease her fail. For the first time ever, they quarrel for an entire day. Anna is convinced the relationship is over, and she falls into despair. Vronsky departs to visit his mother. After Vronsky leaves for the train station, Anna regrets her unfair treatment of him and sends an apologetic note asking to speak to him. She reflects that she wants only to live and that she knows they love each other deeply. Later, Anna sends Vronsky a telegram requesting he return immediately. Restless and not having received a response, Anna drives to Dolly's to say farewell. Kitty hesitates to greet Anna but finally emerges and feels sympathy for her. Anna drives home, reflecting on the fact that all humans hate one another. She receives a curt telegram from Vronsky saying he cannot return before 10 o'clock. Anna grows furious, interpreting the reply as a cold dismissal. She resolves to go to meet Vronsky at the station. On the way, Anna reflects on the Moscow cityscape and on the fact that Vronsky's love has faded. She thinks he feels only duty, not love, toward her. At the station, Anna feels disoriented, focusing on the fakeness of the people in the crowd and hardly knowing why she's there or what destination to request. She boards the train and despises the artificiality of her fellow passengers. Stepping off the train as it stops at Oberalovka, Anna walks along the platform in a despairing daze, finally resolving to throw herself under an approaching train in order to punish Vronsky and be rid of everybody and of herself. A train approaches, and Anna impulsively throws herself under the wheels, begging God for forgiveness and feeling a pang of confusion and regret when it is too late. The candle of her life is extinguished. 2 months pass after Anna's death. Sergei Kosnichev's book on statehood in Russia and Europe, on which he spent 6 years of work, is published to virtually no public recognition. Sergei tries to forget his failure by focusing his attention on the movement to liberate the Serbs, Montenegrins, and other Slavic groups from the Muslim rule of Turkey, a cause that seemingly occupies the whole Russian nation. Sergei and Katavasov accompany a large number of Russian volunteers who are traveling to occupied Serbia to offer military support to the Slavs. A bystander affirms that Vronsky is among the volunteers and that has even outfitted a squadron at his own expense. Stiva appears from the crowd and greets Sergei. God save the Tsar, resounds from the patriotic crowd. Sergei meets Vronsky's mother, who is accompanying her son. The Countess Vronsky insults the dead Anna as mean and low and says that Karenin has taken custody of Anna's young daughter. Finally, Sergei speaks to Vronsky, who is ready and willing to die for the Slavic cause, as nothing in life has value for him now. Sergei and Katavasov visit Levin's estate. Kitty greets them and feeds her infant son Mitya while waiting for Levin to come home. She is glad Levin has visitors, for she has been worrying about his gloomy mood, which she attributes to his lack of religious faith. Levin has been more focused on philosophical questions ever since marriage and fatherhood, searching for the meaning of life. He has read the classics of philosophical idealism, seeking a non-materialist answer to his question. Unable to find any, he has flirted with suicide. When Levin stops thinking and simply lives, he finds himself happy. The day Sergei arrives, Levin is tormented by seeing his peasant workers and imagining them dead and forgotten in a few years. Levin speaks to a peasant, Fyodor, about a local innkeeper who rents some nearby farmland. Fyodor explains that the innkeeper lives only for his belly, unlike many who live for God and goodness. Fyodor's words galvanize Levin. He recognizes that living for God and goodness is the answer to his questions about the meaning of life. He feels freed from life's deceptions. Living for oneself and aiming only to satisfy one's own desires is childish, as Levin notes when he catches his children behaving mischievously. Life is good, whereas thinking is bad. The sky is not infinite but a vault overhead, however irrational that may be. Lying on his back in a field, gazing up at the sky, Levin knows he has found faith and thanks God for it. He resolves never to allow quarrels or estrangement to divide him from other people. Just a few minutes later, however, Levin argues with his driver on the way back home after meeting Sergei and Katavasov. Levin feels self-critical but knows that his faith will survive despite his little moral failures. At home, he meets Dolly and her children, tells her the news about Vronsky's departure from the volunteers, and takes everyone on a picnic. Discussing the Slavic cause with Sergei, Levin states his opposition to the war and expresses skepticism about the Russian people being unanimously behind it. He tries to argue but realizes he is helpless against the wits of the more intellectual Sergei and Katavasov. A sudden violent thunderstorm overtakes the picnickers, who run for the house. Levin learns that Kitty and Mitya are not inside, as he believed, but are still out in the woods. Seeing a giant oak toppling over near where Kitty and the child were sitting, he fears they have been killed but runs to them and finds them safe. Levin realizes the extent of his love for his son, and Kitty is grateful that he finally feels paternal emotions. Feeling another surge of faith, Levin contemplates telling Kitty of his newfound spirituality, but decides not to, concluding that faith is private and expressible. He feels once again that the meaning of life lies in the goodness that one puts into it. The end.